Good afternoon, everybody. We are winding down the conference and hope that you were able to be at our last couple of sessions that went very successfully with the technology, thank goodness. Yay! I want to welcome you to the ISPS-US committee panel, who we are and what we do. I've spoken about the family committee already, so I won't say a lot. We bring the family perspective to the organization and have had panels with various different speakers from the communities that we've been in. And it's been such a wonderful experience for me to be meeting family members across the country and learning and finding out about more resources. Dimitri is the chair of the Person with Lived Experience Committee, and unfortunately, he's not able to join us today. If you want to know more about Dimitri's work, he's just published his book, Life with Voices. Then we have Ron Unger, and he is a therapist, family member, and person with lived experience. As chair of the Education Committee, he helps promote events and produce materials that promote liberatory approaches to psychosis. Then we have Halle Thurnauer, and she's a postdoc psychology fellow at Weill Cornell, New York Presbyterian, working with children and adolescents. Her clinical and research interests are related to early interventions for psychosis, and she is chair of the Early Career and Student Committee. Finally, we have James Marley, who is chair of the Ethics Committee and hopes to advance the discussion of organizational ethics within ISPS. Also, ethical practices and the resolution of any ethical concerns that we may have. So, without further ado, we will go to Ron.
All right, thanks, Pat, for that introduction. In some ways, it's kind of strange that ISPS has an education committee because so much of the main things that ISPS does is education. You know, a big part, obviously, of our annual meeting or conference like this is education. And when we have chapter meetings, that's a lot of what we're doing is education. So what does the education committee do? Well, it actually focuses on education in addition to our annual meeting and our conference. That's the main focus of the committee. And so I could distinguish what we already do from what we could do but haven't done yet. So what we've done so far, really, for the most part, is organizing webinars, which are every so often, you know, we'll have a webinar that's usually about an hour and a half. We have, you know, I've been the organizer for most of these, but Dimitri has been learning how to organize them and has done one so far. And other people actually are, if they, you know, want to learn how to do that, I'm happy to kind of educate them in that, and then they can get started organizing webinars where maybe you know, webinars are interesting. You can bring somebody in from anywhere in the world and have them present and participate in discussion. And so there's really a lot of potential in that for education. So, but also if people want to get involved in the committee, you can just get involved in bringing up ideas for who could be a presenter if you don't want to learn how to organize your own webinars, or just show up and help keep things organized and on track. One of our members, Kaki, has done a lot of that, just showing up and maybe helping out answering people's questions in chat that come up. If you're not familiar with our webinars, they can all be found if you go to the ISPS-US webpage. I think it's under resources or learning opportunities or whatever. All the webinars are listed there. Or also ISPS-US has a YouTube channel, and on that channel you'll see all the webinars. So what we've done so far is we've had a mix of professionals and people with lived experience, sometimes people who are both professionals and have lived experience. We brought in people with a lot of different modalities, you know, the Hearing Voices Network, psychodynamic, CBT, acceptance and commitment therapy, relating therapy. We've even had one on shamanic work, process-oriented psychology, open dialogue. So we've had a pretty good variety, but there's, you know, lots of possibilities for other ones or different people. As far as our current plans for what we're doing, there's a Canadian psychiatrist, Navraj Sandhu, who's planning on one that's going to be about coordinating using medications with therapy, and as therapy is succeeding, kind of like toning down on the medication. I was thinking of maybe inviting the author. There's a book that's come out recently called A Beautiful Psychosis, which I think looked interesting. And then just at this conference, people have been talking about how it would really be great to see ISPS-US have webinars which bring in people with more cultural and racial diversity, because having that on webinars would then, you know, invite, make it feel, ISPS-US feel like a safer place for people that are from racial or racial minorities, or people whose culture is not as dominant in this particular country. So also we could have webinars on that whole process of being, you know, bringing anti-racism and bringing kind of a cultural openness to the work we do in the agencies where we work, as well as bringing it to organizing an organization like ISPS. So there's, you know, I mean, I encourage you to think your own ideas about, hey, what could ISPS-US be doing? And then, hey, maybe you'd be interested in joining in and becoming part of that, and making it happen the way you think it should. Because, you know, a lot of it so far has just been what I thought was right, but obviously my perspective is limited. Now, in addition to, you know, our committee could be doing a lot more than just webinars if we had people joining in and making it happen. One thing we could do more of is foster study groups, kind of like the book club that Marie Hansen has organized. Now, she didn't organize that specifically within the education committee, but she did consult with us. But it's an education committee kind of thing, you know, that just, hey, start a group and study something and talk about it with each other. Another thing that could be organized within ISPS-US is consultation groups, where you just you know, set a time and advertise to the group that you would like to have attend, and then people can consult with each other on how to do this work, because it helps people be a little less alone sometimes if you've got a consultation group, and share ideas and perspectives and learn from each other. Another possibility is developing online education courses, possibly collaborating with other groups who are working in the same direction, such as Mad in America. They're doing online education. That's a possibility. There's a lot of online education going these days. Actually, just something like if somebody put together a list of the best ways to get education in this topic, whether graduate school or continuing education, places people can get training, just having, you know, something like that put together that then you can send people to. It can be posted on the web, or you know, people can share that, and just that would further what's going on. And I know ISPS, the international group, has put together already some web pages about that's just organized how to find out more about our topic, listing articles, books, videos, online resources. But we could get together with them and help, expand that or add different angles to it. There's just a lot that could be done. There's more that could be done with just YouTubes. Like right now on our YouTubes, we have recorded webinars, but often, what gets popular is just short YouTubes that just really hit some specific topic. What we'd want is something to go viral and get seen millions of times. But even if you can get a few thousand, that can be nice. So, and the same thing, just like a YouTube video can really convey something, but sometimes just a shorter, just like a printable brochure that then can be put on the web and people can print out to, you've just been diagnosed with, schizophrenia. How can you cope with that or make sense of it? Or, what is psychosis or something like that? And for people that are new to this topic, that could be a kind of education. Sometimes it could be like putting out position statements backed up by research. Might be something people would want to do, especially for areas where misinformation is common. Debunking some of the common myths about psychosis, or that get people to believe that recovery is impossible, or get people to believe that, psychological work isn't going to get anywhere, or, or the idea that people think they have to get rid of their voices to be healthy, all that stuff. And it's kind of confusing because there is a lot of stuff already out there, and you got to figure out, well, what could we offer that's unique and really, but there is a lot of room for more things to be said. And so I encourage people that feel inspired in that direction to consider joining our committee. And then also, once we produce something, some people might have ideas just in how to better market what we already do. Like if we can have a webinar and have 100 people attend, that's great. But if we had better marketing, maybe we'd have 3,000 attending, which I know people that have really good networks and have managed to reach audiences like that. And if we could do that, we'd start really seeing more change happening. So yeah, if you know something about marketing, you could join and help us with that. Another thing the education could do, I think officially we've been designated the Education and Research Committee, but we don't actually do research. But if somebody wanted to get involved in our committee, we could probably support some of that too. So we are going to have a meeting tomorrow. If people feel kind of like interested in any of what I said and want to try joining in, it's tomorrow. Let's see, what is it? I guess it's at 11, and the link should be in the schedule. And it's going to be over Zoom, so it should work. We'll be able to talk to each other and stuff. So do feel free to join in. And tomorrow, and I think that's what I have to say for now. So I think it's over to Haley at this point.
Thanks, Ron. Perhaps we can also include our emails in the chat if you are both willing at the end in the event that people are interested in joining our committees. So I'm Hallie Thurnauer. I'm the chair of the Student and Early Career Committee. And in the spirit of all of the stories and storytelling that I've heard over this weekend, I'll start by just talking a little bit about my own story with ISPS and how integral it's been in my career and personal development. So I started my career in a research lab. It was a neuropharmacological research lab at a major academic center. And the message about psychosis was it's incurable, like we're going to kind of do the best we can to make quality of life better. But it was a very grim and outlook on what it means to have psychosis, and very narrow perspective on what it means to experience what we call psychosis. And I, as a 22-year-old was like, yeah, this is it. There's all these fancy doctors telling me that this is what it is. And I'm so green. I just want to learn. And who am I to question this? But there was always something that never really felt right about this to me. And it never really sat, especially in meeting people who had these experiences and getting to know them and realizing, that just like everyone else, their lives had ups and downs. And I began to ask some questions, but really wasn't able to articulate them. I didn't have the words to ask the questions, and I didn't have the bravery to stand up to my boss. So flash forward, I go to graduate school and I meet ISPS member and rock star Marie Hansen. And she introduced me to ISPS. My first experience was at the international conference in New York City in 2014 or 15. And it was a life-changing experience in that I was hearing things formulated that I had never really been able to articulate myself, ideas that I had and kind of validating all of the questions that I had asked as a younger person. And so, here I am now, 5 or 6 years later, and have met several people, have learned about job opportunities, have totally shifted my perspective on what it means to have these extreme experiences. And I think even as a graduate student, I'm still subject to a lot of the more kind of traditional or conventional ideas, medical model ideas of what it means to have these experiences. And, ISPS is always a touchstone for me to remember that it's not one thing, and that, that this is a place that I can come to learn from people who kind of think outside of the box. And it's been, again, not just important to my professional life, but my personal life as well. So as the chair of the Early Career and Student Committee, I really want to be able to bring this experience to other students who might be asking questions, or other young professionals who might be asking these questions themselves as they're navigating their careers. And that being said, this committee has been dormant for quite a while at this point. And historically, we've held events at the conference, like happy hour events, like meet and greets to network. And that's really been an important part of my experience with ISPS. But there really hasn't been a lot more. And so my mission is to bring ISPS to a wider range of folks, especially early career and students. I think, one of the goals that I have for this committee is just to increase the number of younger folks that are involved with ISPS. I have the sense that oftentimes we'll get students of people who are presenting at the host city, and they'll be there for that year. They'll present a poster, and then we won't see them the next year. So my goal is to somehow incentivize people to stick around, to not just present when their advisor is part of the planning committee for that year's conference, but also to come back in the following years. And one of the major goals of this committee is to include everyone who's in the early stages of their professional lives. And so this includes, psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, peer support specialists, people from other disciplines who have interest in what we call psychosis, to kind of have an intersection of folks contributing to how we can support young professionals. So last night we held our happy hour over Zoom, And it wasn't quite the same as it is every year, but it was really nice to get to meet a lot of folks that are here this year who are students in the early stages of their career. And I used this as an opportunity to pick their brains and use them to figure out how we can kind of be more cohesive as a committee and provide outreach to other early career professionals and students. So one of the things that we discussed, and I told them I was going to rip off all of their ideas and assume them as my own, but I am giving them all credit. So one of the ideas we had is that we could hold maybe a monthly series or every other month series for students about student issues. So whether it's getting into grad school, navigating the peer certification process, how to prepare for licensure exams, talks to highlight student research or help people practice if they are giving a presentation at a conference or preparing a poster for a conference. We could, workshop it together. They could practice with us. And maybe holding a film screening, because that's something that the young folks like. We came up with the idea maybe of speed networking, having people go into breakout rooms and asking both personal and professional questions just to get to know one another. And another idea that I thought would be fantastic is just using one another for just more support as you navigate the professional world, and just using it as a support group and sharing successes and sharing difficult clinical situations that come up. So these are some of the ideas that the happy hour committee had last night around how we can just provide more content really for people throughout the year that's not just at the conference, that could incentivize them sticking around a little bit longer. Another idea that came up was also sharing job opportunities. So kind of leaning on some of the other members of the ISPS organization and having them forward us job postings so we can circulate them to young professionals. Perhaps creating a list of programs that our members come from so that, prospective students can contact our members to ask them about academic programs that they might be able to talk about, or that, programs that might have some sort of affiliation or ideological similarity to what we stand for as an organization. A final idea that came out of this discussion was kind of bringing in undergraduates. I think historically, our organization has mostly drawn graduate students and early career professionals that are, in psychiatry or psychology or social work. But we're trying to kind of expand that a little bit more. And perhaps part of doing that would be to reach out to undergraduates and help them kind of get their foot in the door in often really competitive and difficult to navigate programs. And, an issue with students is always money. So, you have to pay, even as a student, you have to pay for this conference. We would ask it for these monthly events that we'd hold a small fee just to make a little bit of money. But really the hope is that we would not hold these events to make money, but more just to gain some new members. But we are thinking that one of the challenges to students is, joining a professional organization like ISPS is expensive. So one thing that we're considering is asking senior members of the organization to sponsor student memberships. So that's really the last thing that I wanted to share as far as, what these are all hypotheticals. They're not things that have been actualized, but they are things that came up as things that might draw other early career professionals into our organization. And I, invite you all, if you have any ideas on how to recruit and retain new early career or student members, I'm all ears, and hoping that we can get, especially this kind of monthly or every other month series of webinars or meetings together, just to do some outreach and kind of some PR with early career and student folks. So I think that's it for me. Please offer any suggestions in the chat. And so now we will start with James Marley with the Ethics Committee.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm James Marley. I'm the chair of the Ethics Committee for ISPS-US. The committee has been dormant. It was kind of a hypothetical committee, and then I was able to come on board as the first chair of this committee. And it's kind of similar to the two previous speakers. There are many possibilities with this committee, and I think we are looking for additional members and people with some energy and interest in looking at ethics and the intersection of ethics with the work of ISPS-US. Originally, the committee was really, well, I should say originally I was hoping that we would be meeting face-to-face in Atlanta, and had a number of things I was hoping to sort of roll out and speak to about the ethics committee. And then with COVID and moving everything online and everything else, some of those projects got put sort of on the back burner while I dealt with some other issues. But a couple of the things that are being looked at for the ethics committee, and if you go on the website, you'll find some basic stuff related to the ethics committee. But one issue we're looking at or interested in looking at is what would essentially be sort of a code of ethics or a kind of a more detailed statement of values for the ISPS-US organization. The issue of a code of ethics is kind of interesting for an organization like ISPS because we are a membership organization that spans a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different professions. I'm a social worker by training, but we have psychologists and psychiatrists and nurses, but we also have family members, people with lived experience. A whole host of folks join ISPS for a lot of different reasons. And thinking about how ethics and the values of ISPS can be looked at in terms of the commonalities across all of those different points of view, different perspectives, is a challenging issue, but I think one that is worth taking a look at. So thinking more about how do we make explicit the values that underlie everything that ISPS-US does. One of the ways that I think about defining ethics is talking about ethics is really when you put your values into action. And if ISPS-US has a number of values that it prioritizes, then how do its actions show those values in practice? And some of the values that you can obviously discern from the organization, things like prioritizing the role and the perspective of people with lived experience, family members, and many of the mental health professionals that work in this field. So thinking about those groups and how the value of getting, like I said, people with lived experience really front and center in the organization, that would be a core value of this organization. So then the ethics really needs to speak to how we make that manifest in everything that we do, whether again it's thinking about trainings, conferences, etc. And so that we can be sort of an ethical organization, because what we do, how we go about doing it, really shows the values that we hold dear, being very clear and evident to everybody. So as a ethics committee, I am hoping that we will have the opportunity at some point to really think about how a code of ethics, a code of values, the the ways that ethics can support the work of ISPS and all of its membership would be something that we could take a more detailed look at. The other thing that we have thought about as an ethics committee, we periodically have organizations, other entities that wish to partner with ISPS-US. They may want to sponsor talks or other kinds of partnership opportunities. It would be nice through the ethics committee to really think about a system whereby when individuals or organizations would like to partner with ISPS, what kind of a vetting process do those individuals or organizations go through to really make sure that what they do is, again, in line with the values of ISPS-US. Making sure that we align ourselves or partner with other organizations that are doing ethical work and presenting ethical perspectives, and making sure that we can feel good about that partnership moving forward. And what role could the ethics committee play in developing a system to vet those kinds of potential partnerships, so that we have many eyes and many perspectives looking at what these partnerships bring to ISPS-US, and making sure that we're comfortable aligning ourselves with these organizations. So I think the ethics committee could play a part in developing that system and working perhaps in subgroups, things like that, so that when an organization reaches out to ISPS, it could come to the ethics committee for some conversation and maybe some discernment about whether this is a organization that seems aligned with the values of ISPS-US. Another thing that the ethics committee has talked about periodically is the potential for the committee to really field ethics questions coming from the membership. So if you are a family member or someone with lived experience, or if you are a service provider working in an organization and you are concerned about something, or you are uncomfortable about something, either the way you are being talked to in terms of services, or the kind of services you are receiving, or other sorts of things, could the ethics committee play a part in at least providing some initial guidance or initial feedback about the nature of the concern that you have? Clearly, we are not a legal body, but with ethics and the role of ethics, oftentimes when you bring a group of people together to think about, ponder, review the kinds of concerns that, again, people with lived experience, family members, service providers may have, there could be some benefit to taking a thoughtful ethical reflection about this, and perhaps providing some initial feedback, guidance, possibly even some literature, or point people in directions for other organizations or other outlets if there really seems to be some merit to their concerns, to their worries about receiving ethical treatment, ethical advice, ethical information. I bring that up because, again, my interest in ethics really was created many years ago when I started getting pulled more into doing a lot of expert witness testimony in cases brought against primarily social workers, since that's the profession I'm aligned with, and thinking about ethics and the ethics of all sorts of things related to diagnosis, service provision, the actions of service providers, and really having to grasp sort of a wide berth of information about ethics, the intersection of ethics and law, ethics, law, and agency policies, a whole variety of things that can shape how people experience the services they're getting, and how sometimes complaints have validity to them, and can there be a sounding board to really reflect on these issues. And I think the ethics committee could be potentially one of those sounding boards. I came to this population working with people with lived experience and their families. Like I said, I'm primarily a social worker by training. primarily a family therapist by, I guess, methodology. But I've been doing this work now for 38 years, where I have focused primarily on adults with a variety of mental health problems, primarily adults with psychosis, voice hearers, and doing a lot of work with the family members of individuals having those experiences. And I've worked in agencies and residential facilities and have found myself always questioning some of the issues, the policies, the ethics of the organization, the values the organizations prioritize, and working towards trying to make sure that these policies and procedures and things that really shape how people get services really are transparent about the values that they hold. So I think the Ethics Committee has a role to play in, as I said, kind of thinking about an organizational kind of ethics approach and making sure that the values that ISPS-US, as well as just ISPS generally, hold are transparent, are clear, and drive everything that the organizations do. And then I think we can also look at how we think about organizational partnerships and making sure that anybody that we align ourselves with has values and ethics that align well with those of the ISPS-US, and then how the committee can be a sounding board or a point of connection whenever membership people in the organization have concerns or just want a second set of eyes or another set of ears to hear what kinds of experiences they've been having and what might be some resources that could be helpful for them as they think through the dilemmas that they're facing. The ethics committee, as I said, we need membership. Like I said, it's been a quiet committee, and I think if there are people listening to this, members of the organization, and who have interest in ethics, broadly speaking, or any of those kind of initiatives that I'm hoping we can move forward with. We will be having a meeting of the Ethics Committee tomorrow, I believe 10 o'clock Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Central Time on Zoom, so we can chat with each other via Zoom tomorrow morning. And I really am hoping that people will want to get involved with some of this. I'm a little bit biased. I've been in the field of ethics now for several decades, both in terms of professional ethics, research ethics. As I said, I do a lot of expert witness testimony for legal cases involving primarily mental health related issues. And it's hard for me not to always sort of by default go to the ethical issues that seem to play, both in how organizations operate, how they treat their members, and especially with ISPS-US, the diversity of the membership and how the ethics committee can really try to provide a good sounding board and foundation for many of the activities that the organization does. One of the things that I would direct you to, if you are interested in ISPS-US as well as ISPS around issues of values and ethics, if you go to the ISPS, the international organization, you'll find an interesting document in there, which is called the ISPS Liverpool Declaration. And I would encourage you, if you have an interest in ethics, to really look at that Liverpool Declaration, because I found it an intriguing, brief document, which really talks about things like the role of the person diagnosed, the role of treatment and prevention, as well as issues related to things like political and social action, and thinking about what's going on currently in the United States and how organizations are positioning themselves around political and social action as really becoming an ethical action, that taking a stand on some of the political and social issues that impact many of our membership in different ways, oftentimes, for example, people with lived experience being disproportionately harmed by some of the issues going on around the country and the world right now. We really need to think about the ethics of political and social action. So again, there will be a ethics committee meeting tomorrow morning. I'm hoping that many of you, if you have an interest in any of these initiatives or ideas, can join us. And I look forward to talking more with members who may just want to talk about ethics and the role ethics can play in what ISPS-US does. But I think I'll end my comments there.